Welcome to the Truth and Fertility Podcast. I'm Haley, wife, mom, and a fertility charting instructor, here to teach you the undeniable truth about your fertility. So let's get started. Welcome back to the Truth and Fertility Podcast. I'm talking to Sarah Bartel. She is a moral theologian and Catholic sex and marriage coach. So yes, you guys, we're talking about sex today, and it is such an important conversation. And I also find that it's hard to find trusted people to talk to about this stuff. So I promise you, Sarah is going to be your go-to girl when it comes to just talking about sex and talking about logistics of how do we make sex and marriage good and fruitful and free and fun and all the things. So anyway, she is a moral theologian and Catholic sex and marriage coach dedicated to the theology of the body and the feminine genius. She is the host of the My Delight podcast and co-founder of Cana Feast, which is a marriage Catholic ministry. Or a Catholic marriage ministry. Her My Delight course is dedicated to helping married and engaged Catholic women undo knots of shame, ignorance, and isolation to develop holy, healthy, whole person sexual intimacy with their husbands. Isn't that so needed? She is a mom of 5 from Washington State, where she loves hiking, reading Jane Austen, feeding her kids salmon, and heading off on adventures. Sarah earned her PhD in moral theology and Christian ethics from the Catholic University of America. Sarah, welcome to the podcast.
I'm delighted to be here, Haley. Thank you.
Absolutely. So I know I just gave your bio, but could you give a little bit of an introduction of what you do? I know you're a Catholic marriage sex coach, but what does that look like? Like when I hear sex coach, I don't think Catholic. So can you talk a little bit more about what you do? Yeah.
Yeah. So I primarily work with women, wives, engaged and mostly married Catholic women inside my course called My Delight, which runs twice a year. It's a live group experience. So for 3 months starting in February and then 3 months beginning in September, I take a whole group through the materials in my course. And that is where, I just help them through a journey of transformation to a better sex life. So through, teaching, coaching within the course, that's how I work with ladies. Yeah.
Amazing. And it's, like I said earlier, it's so needed. It is so needed. Just this conversation is needed for a lot of women.
That's a big key of it too. I would say the secret ingredient in my course is all the women in the course, because we get to connect women with each other. And, of course I share teachings and guidance and best practices and what I know from my moral theology background, what I know from my marriage enrichment experience and the marriage enrichment ministry that I run with my husband. And like specific tips for, how to make things work well in the bedroom. But then just having the women be able to connect with each other inside our group coaching calls and inside the community portion of the course. Then they realize, oh, I'm not the only one. Oh, you too. And they encourage and support each other. They realize they're not alone. Maybe by seeing, the other problems other women are struggling with, they're like, well, actually, that gives me perspective on my problem here. That, it's just really encouraging to break down that isolation. Because, how often are we really talking about these things at coffee and donuts? So Mildred, tell me, how do you and Walt get you to orgasm, right? Like, that's just not something we say over the macaroni salad.
Hysterical.
Potluck, right? Maybe in mom's group. I think a lot of good things happen in a lot of parish moms groups where you might be more likely to have that kind of conversation. But even then, we just encourage the conversations to happen.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I was just going to say, is that even in those scenarios where it's all women, for a long time, I was in a group of women that met once a week, and it was basically like a Bible study. But even that conversation of orgasm, I don't think ever came up, ever. And it's hard to bring up that conversation, because it's you don't want to pry too much, and because this is a very intimate topic. Obviously, it's private. Also, too, it's just wanting to respect the husband, because you don't want to press too much into it, or even share too much about your own your own experience, because it's not just yours, it's your husband's too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So kind of trying to navigate, like, how do you talk about this? How do you find solidarity in it, but then still respecting the privacy aspect of it? Yeah, it's kind of hard to find that balance, but this is why we record podcasts and let everybody in the world listen. So the first thing I want to go through, Sarah, is what are the typical things that you're seeing when you're working with women? Like what are some of the things that are impeding them from having like a very joy-filled, free, like confident sex life in their marriage? What are some of the common things that you see, common struggles?
Yeah, great. Well, I'm going to start with one that I was thinking of while we were talking about having conversations in isolation, because pain in intercourse is really common among women, and Catholic women are no exception. And I have had many students in my course tell me, I got pelvic floor therapy because my sister-in-law mentioned that it had helped her, or my friend had told me that when she got married, she experienced pain in intercourse and got pelvic floor therapy. So when I was engaged, I had that on my radar. And I think that is really key to just, be that sister-in-law, be that friend, or just spread awareness that pain in sex is not normal, and you should not think that that's something you have to put up with. It makes it worse if you just force yourself and grit through it. But that is a pretty common problem that I find comes up with women. And I'm not a pelvic floor specialist, but I just want to let everybody who is listening know there is that specific kind of help that can really be effective for healing a lot of the pain in intercourse, pain in intimacy. But it's not the only component. There can just be anxiety that causes pain, or ignorance about how much foreplay is really, necessary for our female arousal curves, which are much longer and slower. In the importance of relaxing first so that you can enter into lovemaking already relaxed, and that helps your vaginal wall muscles relax. So I just had a wonderful woman in my course share with me that when she implemented the tip to add a 15-minute massage before foreplay, her pain at initial entry went away. And then she and her husband made love, but they had a tighter time frame, and he asked her if she wanted a massage first, but she said, no, let's just skip it. I probably don't need it. And she did have the pain. It came back again. So just that simple addition of massage before really helped her. So that is one really common issue. A lot of women enter because they say they're low libido, they just don't desire sex, or they don't desire it as often as their husband does. So we do a lot of work around, what is libido? How do you nurture it? And there's just a lot to say about that. And also about our mindset about sex. Have you been affected by purity culture or porn culture? Do you have body image issues? All these things really hold women back. And just ignorance about, how God designed our bodies to work well for enjoying lovemaking. Ignorance, about our female genitalia and the different parts and what does what. God made us so intricate and delicate and beautiful, and there's so much more to enjoying lovemaking than can result from just penis and vagina. If it's okay to say the words.
Yes. Yep, we do. Yep.
Yeah. When you understand that God gave women an organ specifically for sexual pleasure, the clitoris, that there are 8,000 nerve endings in the clitoris, and that's twice as many as there are on the husband's penis for sexual pleasure. So the husband have 4,000 nerve endings for sexual pleasure on their penis, and those are activated in intercourse, in the penis and vagina portion of lovemaking. But for most women, about 90% of women, that is not enough stimulation to really activate the clitoris. So they really need to understand more about foreplay and the importance of that, and the attunement and communication and tenderness and patience of the couple in that time. So that's another factor. And then I would say different life stage issues affect women at various points of the marital life cycle. So when you're first married, trying to figure out how this all works. And then flipping the switch from until now, outside of marriage, sex has been the biggest sin, often in purity culture, seen as like the worst sin you could possibly do. So there's all this shame loaded around sex. And yes, it is a sin. I would say it's not the worst sin. And it's really hard a lot of times for women then to enter into marriage and, okay, sex is on the table like this. It's okay. It's licit now. But most of my formative years, like most of the time I've ever thought about sex, I've just thought it's bad. I, shouldn't do it. And it's shameful. Mm-hmm. So that's really hard then to develop a positive mindset about sex when you're newlywed. And then in those busy years of raising kids, the problems are a lot of times are about finding time for lovemaking. Mom's exhausted. She's got, 6 kids under 8 or whatever. She's got a toddler and a nursing infant. Her, the prolactin from the nursing or postpartum recovery, all these really take care. The woman needs rest and care to flourish in those years when she's doing such intense caregiving. And she may feel a lot of pressure to be present sexually for her husband, who may not be as exhausted and might be more interested in sex.
Right.
And, just I help women try to understand that the way God designed us in his wisdom is that our libido and our capacity for enjoying lovemaking, that resides in our parasympathetic nervous system. And that's when we're in rest and digest. When we're in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, we're in our sympathetic nervous system. And wisely, that's not the time when our bodies are saying, yeah, let's make more children. Let's get together and have sex with our husbands. So learning the importance of calming down the nervous system, emotional regulation, rest, and fun, delight in the rest of our lives, so that then we can have the capacity for delight in lovemaking and creating realistic expectations for what that looks like in those busy seasons in terms of frequency. It might be less, realistically. So that's a big problem. Another big problem, which I was not expecting when I was doing my moral theology studies in the area of sexuality and theology of the body, this concept had never come up in my studies. But as I started working with women, I realized, wow, this is a huge problem, and it's affecting a ton of Catholic women. And that is this false idea of marital debt that is alive and, running around in a lot of Catholic circles, such that many Catholic married men and women believe that it's the wife's duty to be sexually available for her husband and to have sex with him whenever he initiates. In some circles, especially in traditional Latin Mass communities, not all of them, but it does come up there. I find more frequently. It is even considered a sin for the wife to decline lovemaking unless the situation meets certain requirements, like to get pregnant would make her die, or the husband's drunk, or they don't have sufficient privacy. That's not in official church teaching. That is something, I don't know where it came from and why it's in TLM communities, but that, and as well as kind of this obligation sex message that has leaked into the Catholic world from the evangelical Protestant world, from their speakers and authors and sex guidance there. Also, there's this message that if you don't have sex with your husband and keep his cup full, sometimes there's like time requirements, like you have to have sex every 72 hours for a really flourishing marriage. Then it's your fault, basically, if your husband goes off and sins by masturbating and watching porn or having an affair, which this is not true. If anyone just came in right now, I'm not saying this is a true theological statement. That is not Catholic teaching at all. But anyway, you can hear, Haley, like all this pressure, moral pressure on women in their marriage to be sexually available for their husbands. That is a huge problem. And I do a lot of work inside my delight to try to undo and untangle that knot and change that false belief and show what the church actually teaches and where we can find references for that. And then how to communicate with your husband if you've been in an obligation sex lifestyle. So that's a big one. And then moving along the life cycle, as we grow older, thanks be to God, and get to live more years together, such a blessing. Then we go through perimenopause and menopause. This can affect our reproductive, our sexual organs, and some women experience a lot more dryness after menopause in the vaginal area, and libido can go any which way. You might experience lower libido after menopause. You might experience higher, but you might have no change, or you might have change. But anyway, there are a lot of thoughts around, women have ideas about what menopause will mean for them, or what they think is happening. And then the husbands, their male functioning can hit some challenges as well in midlife and later, with erectile dysfunction and prostate issues and all of that. So then, right, things can change, and I actually do quite a bit of coaching and advice giving around, how to navigate different situations when husband and wife get to live into their golden years, and still can create a beautiful, joyful, mutually nourishing love life in those times. Though, if husband can't get an erection anymore, even with medical assistance, then alas, no more intercourse, right. No more sexual stimulation, because that touching of the sexual stimulation is meant to be part of a lovemaking session that includes, right. The husband's penis inside the wife's vagina, just to clarify. But yeah. So I think that kind of runs the gamut of a lot of the challenges that come up.
Oh man, and some of those I was like, that checks out. But then some of them I'm like, oh man, these are things that I have never really thought of or talked to people about. I want to hit all of those if we can. I know we're limited on time, but I really want to hit, first of all, the moral thing that you were talking about, and the marital debt. Thank you. The obligation. And I want to talk about that specifically in the context of motherhood, because I think that, obviously there can be sexual intimacy issues or struggles in early married life, maybe before you have kids. That's I'm not trying to downplay that, but and maybe it's just because I'm in the experience of young. I have a 5-year-old, 3-year-old, and 1-year-old. I am in the trenches of early motherhood. And so I think it's just because it's on the top of my brain, but it is this idea of when you are a mother, especially to littles and especially to a lot of kids, you get touched out. You're just done by the end of the day. You get touched out. You just feel, in all honesty, and this isn't just me, I've heard this from other women, and I'm sure you have heard this, you just don't feel like a sexual being anymore. And I kind of made a joke about this to my husband a few days ago, but there was some truth behind it too that kind of made me sad, honestly, that I was saying it. But we practice NFP, and right now we're in a state of trying to avoid pregnancy for a temporary time. And so my husband was like, well, we can still be intimate like how we were when we were dating. By the grace of God, we were able to wait until we chose to wait until our married, or until we were married, until our wedding night, to come together. But so he was like, we could, it kind of would mirror like that, before we were dating. And I looked at him, I'm like, babe, that was back when I had hormones. It just felt like it was, and it was me. It was a joke. We laughed, but in all honesty, it's I don't feel. And so many young women, or it's not young women, young moms, or moms in general, young or older, just don't feel like that anymore. Can you speak to women, and first of all, making sure that we're not feeling alone in that? Because I think that's something that it would help, knowing that, okay, I'm not alone in feeling like this. Obviously, it's something that needs to be addressed and healed. And maybe there's, spiritual, mental, even bodily issues going on there that's contributing to that. But I just want women to know, okay, they're not alone in that. But then where can they go from here? Where is that integrate, or how does being an exhausted mom and a sexy wife integrate? Like, where do we
I
find
love
the
that.
integration there? There's my question. Okay, I'll stop talking so you
That's so
can,
good.
you can
Okay,
give your
first of all, I'm
wisdom.
just going to point out it's not just early motherhood. That's not the only time of intensive caregiving. When your parents get old and need a lot of help, or if you're a caregiver for an elderly adult, or disabled adult, or a nurse, or have a really intense job, intensive caregiving can look a lot of different ways. But yes, Catholic moms and early motherhood, you're really feeling it in this specific way. And I have so many thoughts around this, Haley, because I've been there too. I have 5 kids. I was in there. Now my youngest is 6. And so we have no more diapers, and it's a whole different phase. But I just want to take a moment and thank all those moms out there for what you're doing, because it's so precious and beautiful. And it really is a gift. Even though it's so exhausting. And I remember just losing my mind sometimes, really, it was a teacher for me in the vital necessity of self-care for me. Because for me, if I did not really prioritize self-care, I literally would I would get depressed, or anxiety, like clinical anxiety would come up. And I was like, you know what? I could go on meds again and therapy, or I can really double down on self-care. And I think through God's grace, through the experiences in my life, he showed me very clearly, I need to learn that God put someone on earth whose job it is to care for me. And it's me. That is a job that I have. And am I doing that? Because I think there's something, especially in American culture, in which we have this idea of motherhood that if you are running around with spit up on your shoulder and a messy bun and are exhausted and have no time for yourself, you're doing it right. That means you're a good mom. Does that ring a little bit true? Do you get that?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Like the more tired you are, the better you're being a mom, right?
Right.
Or
That's
like,
your badge of
yeah,
honor, right?
yeah.
And it doesn't have to be that way. I mean, yes, it's hard, but there are other cultures in which they have other models of what it looks like to be a successful mom. And my eyes were open to this by reading the book, Bringing Up Bebe. I think it's by Pamela Druckerman. Have you
Yes.
read that?
Oh my gosh. I read that right before my first was born.
Read it
Yes.
again.
Uh-huh.
Yes. And I
Uh-huh.
actually lived in France. I was an au pair in France.
Wow.
Paris during my college years. So I was at the parks with the kids who were my au pair charges, and I saw the other moms who were there, and they were reading a book on the park bench and having intellectual discussions with each other instead of hovering right next to the kids on the swings, giving them every push, or they let the kids play. So anyway, I guess my point here, without rambling too much, is first of all, lean into self-care. It's not an optional thing. It is a mandate that God gave you. So find out how you need help, and do you need we've all got a combination of certain resources, time, energy, and money, and our social connections and our social network.
Mm-hmm.
Which of those can you lean into more in this very busy season to get help? Is it doing a babysitting swap with friends? Is it throwing some money at housekeeping help? Like maybe bring a housekeeper in once every other week. That saved my bacon for many of these busy years. And yeah, it's a sacrifice of other priorities on the budget list. And, maybe it seems like an extra, but there's a way you can get help. You ask for it from your husband. You can, ask your family. Just find help because you're not meant to do this on your own. And then the other thing, set boundaries and change your mindset, right? Like it is legitimate and appropriate for you to have a half hour in your day to do something that's enjoyable for you, right? And so you can train your kids, even your young kids, during the youngest one's nap, train the older kids to do a quiet time, get them some fun, sparkly toys that are, special just for that time. And you sit down and read a book you enjoy. For me, that would be something like Jane Austen or a classic or something for my Well-Read Mom Book Club. Maybe you maybe just do some walking, even pacing around your house, or just getting outside and drinking some tea and breathing and being still. Like there's something that you can do in your life where you can add in a half hour of time for yourself. Maybe if this is time you're going to pluck your brows and trim your fingernails or something, but you get the idea that we can actually put a box and put borders and limits around our energy expenditure so that we're not always frazzled and maxed out. That's not a sign that you're doing it right. It's a sign that you need to figure out what help you can get and how you can reduce your expectations. Maybe you don't need to make every single meal from scratch, right? Maybe one night a week, the kids can have cold cereal out of a box in plastic bowls. And
they're not going to die. They're going to be fine.
Not going to die. You do a streamlined bedtime routine, right? They don't get baths that night. One story, maybe they all get the same story together, a quicker bedtime. And then you and your husband, after you put the kids down to bed, neither you nor your husband goes and picks up your phone or iPad or laptop. Leave the devices around. You go straight to the bedroom. This is like a mission. You got to make a beeline for the bedroom and then just cuddle and rest and chat and talk. Or maybe you need to take a bath, or basically you need to regulate your nervous system in some way to calm yourself down and get your sense of self back after having kids, hanging off of you and tugging at your clothes and, nursing from your breasts and clinging onto your leg. You need some time to just breathe. You can do relaxation exercises, deep breathing exercises, flip through a magazine or a book, nothing with screens. That's not going to calm down your nervous system. That's going to keep it ramped up. It will feel like an escape, but will not leave you in a better place for lovemaking, and it will not help you be more whole. So then, some rest and relaxation for yourself, and then a transition time into the lovemaking where, and you might, depending on your relationship and your personality, maybe that's with your husband. I'll teach you my little mini coma foreplay technique. So this could be you and your husband go to bed after putting the kids to bed, and you have a plan to make love. And so scheduling making love is really helpful in a lot of stages in life and in a lot of marriages. But it's sex night. And so you're going to make love and you go to bed, but you just lay there in his arms in the dark room, unresponsive, like you're in a coma, not saying anything, not moving, just letting the day melt off. And you can tell him, I am totally into this. I am definitely ready to rock. I'm looking forward to rocking your world in a little while. But for right now, I'm just laying here in a mini coma for 5 minutes while you hold me. And or 10 minutes, or take what you need, 15, right? But that can be a really good way to just get your sense of self back before then you turn around and do this intense self-sharing and receiving of lovemaking. And then another thing with being touched out, which I'll mention, that I learned from my friend Ellen Holloway, who has the Charting Towards
Yes. I've heard of her too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she's great. Have her on I would encourage you to invite her on.
Okay. Yeah, I will. Absolutely.
But she has an episode called All the Touches We Don't Want. I think it's I forget exactly. It's in the 100.
I'll find it and I'll put it in the show notes, because that's probably something I need to listen to.
Yeah.
Even just for me.
Well, not as much in these years, but absolutely, I would feel that when I was carrying kids around and they were like physically close to me more. But she points out that a lot of times all these touches are on the front of your torso or your upper arms, your maybe legs if you got little leg clingers.
Right.
And your back is not touched out. Unless maybe I would say I did do a lot of baby wearing. So maybe if you're carrying a baby on your back, that might be an exception. But when you go to love, or even just what you were talking about, Haley, with having affection with your husband like you did when you were engaged, and you're not going to have sex, but think about a back massage or a lower back massage. That part of you has not been overstimulated by touch throughout the day. And what are other parts too? A foot massage, maybe a leg massage, like that. And then after a bit of leg massage or back or foot massage, then you might be more up for kissing or, sharing your upper body and head space.
That is such a good point. I have never thought of you can be touched out at the end of the day, but being more specific about where are you touched out and not starting there. That, oh my gosh. that just blew my mind. I'm so grateful you said that because that is such a good point. Like, okay, there are other things that we can do, even just to start to get your mind into it that don't make you feel as touched out and that don't feel like, oh, okay, this is just, another person touching me, right? Like
No, you.
that is so good. And also too, I wanted to mention as well, like when you feel like it's just kind of another chore, like especially in that motherhood state, like you're crossing off to-dos all day and you're doing all the things, probably not taking near enough time for self-care as you're saying, and you're doing all those things, and then sex at the end of the day just becomes another one of those check marks.
Oh,
And I
so
think, I think that it's easy to get into that mindset, and it's easy to get to the point where when the kids go to bed, you're just like, okay, let's just get this done and over with, because it is just, you're in your mind, you're thinking, okay, it's just another thing to check off, rather than having that transition time that you're talking about in between mothering versus being a wife, and like having that intentional transition time and not just wanting to get it over with or wanting to, really giving yourself, like filling yourself back up in order to be able to give of yourself again in such a more intimate and whole way. I love that, the being touched out. Where are you being touched out? I absolutely love that. I also want to talk about, kind of transitioning a little bit, I want to talk about painful intercourse, because as you mentioned in the beginning, that is huge. That's a huge thing. I know plenty of women, even though I said at the beginning I don't talk a whole lot about this with my friends, I still know women that really struggle with this. And I know a lot of it is that mindset of being, of not having enough self-care. That can absolutely be into it, and then there's other anatomical things that could affect it as well. But can you just talk a little bit about, I believe it's called vaginismus, is that that's the medical term for it? So painful intercourse, where does that come from? Like, why do women feel that? And then what can we do? What can we do about it if that's something we're experiencing?
Yeah, there is help. First of all, please stop having painful sex. If anybody is listening, any women are listening, and you are forcing yourself to have sex and it's painful, please stop. Have compassion on yourself. God is not asking of that of you. Your husband's going to be okay. Sex is not a need. That's another false belief I really try to work to undo. Sex is not a need. It's not like you have to meet this need for your husband. That comes from the Protestant authors and speakers. They are the ones who decided that now we're going to call sex a need for men.
Right.
But anyway, he's going to be okay. He's not going to die. He'll be fine. But for you, the more you force yourself to have painful sex, the more that wires in this neural pathway that, deepens that groove in your brain of associating sex and pain. And that then it just becomes harder and harder to untangle that knot of connection. But it is totally, in most cases, it is totally possible to reverse and undo painful sex. And there's different kinds of pain. There's pain upon initial entry, pain with deeper penetration. Vaginismus is this tightening of the vaginal walls upon, something entering the vagina. It could be a tampon, could be the speculum during your annual well woman visit, right? Or it could be the husband's penis, right? And so this tightening causes the pain there. And there's different kinds of tissues, of fibers in our muscles. So we have some that tighten voluntarily and some that tighten involuntarily. So pelvic floor therapy, working with a pelvic floor specialist, can be really important and effective in helping you train yourself to relax those muscles with breath work, with, relaxation, sometimes working with dilators, silicone dilators that you would insert, gradually and increasing in size. That's totally morally illicit. Don't worry. It's not like masturbation or anything morally wrong just because you're putting a therapeutic silicone dilator inside. That can be really, really helpful. However, you also have to address the mindset and teaching yourself that sex is actually something good and good for you, and teaching yourself that you're safe in lovemaking. So that's why having your no and using it is really important. But there's further work to do with the mind to help those involuntary muscle contractions learn to feel safe enough to stay, to be relaxed. in intercourse. And then also maybe pelvic floor therapy isn't the solution for every situation. Maybe there's still some hymen left over and you might need to get that surgically removed. Maybe there's really inflamed, endometriosis. So intercourse is painful because of all the inflammation around the womb, and that gets, activated during lovemaking. And so getting appropriate care for that, learning how to, and that this could be something pretty far reaching for the path to healing, like working with maybe a functional nutritionist to learn how to, reduce inflammation in your body, or, or the surgery, maybe surgery for the endometriosis. There could be a lot of different paths here to feeling better. But a lot of times it's just something as simple as learning how to engage in a sufficient amount of foreplay while your mind is focused on sex positive thoughts, thinking of yourself as like, I can be a mama and a sexy woman. I can be a sexy mama. And, like I give myself permission to be open to pleasure in lovemaking. And I'm, going to use the images in my mind, my thoughts, to be as conducive as possible to make lovemaking a good experience, keeping your to-do list outside of your brain as much as possible during the lovemaking.
Yeah.
Keep that outside the bedroom door, like put down your mental backpack full of your tote bag, your mom tote bag or diaper bag full of all the to-dos and appointments. Mentally leave that outside the door. So, and then also there can be other conditions as well that, need medical treatment to reduce pain in intercourse.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I want to press in a little bit more on the mindset part because of how difficult that can be. I mean, even when you're trying a lot of it is mindset. A lot of it is when you're like in foreplay, right? You're thinking positive thoughts about that. And oftentimes those to-dos and those maybe more negative thoughts, either if it's like body negativity or maybe past trauma, those thoughts start coming into your head, which obviously is like a discussion for another day. But do you have any tips on how to manage those thoughts and like be really intentional about only trying to only think those positive thoughts? Because I know that your thoughts just play so much into how your body responds to sexual stimulation, right?
Definitely.
So do you have any tips or any comment about that and mindset?
I have so many tips, Haley. That is why My Delight is a 12-week group coaching program, because they're like, I can't share them all in one sitting, but there is a lot that's possible. And some of these tips will work. You'll be like, that will really be what unlocks it for some women. And then other women, it might be other tips and ideas. But yes, first of all, but I'll just share a smattering of them right now.
Okay.
And I just want to encourage women, like, this is entirely possible to do. It's entirely possible to change the kinds of thoughts that you're thinking. And I just want to sort of set this into the conversation as well. We might want to come back to this later. Another big issue for most of us women is control. And in lovemaking, in order to really enjoy it, we need to learn to surrender this sense of like us controlling everything or being in control of life. So that might be something we might want to check in and talk about later.
Oh, for sure.
But okay. So if I will say, first of all, you can start with prayer with your husband. You and your husband could pray together as you're, just about to settle into lovemaking, or during this like transition time when you're cuddling and chit-chatting together in the bed. Just pray for God's blessing, upon your renewal of your marital covenant with your bodies, and ask him to help make it, really full of delight for you both. Or maybe you might need to target this prayer specifically. Help us blow. I think Gregory Popchak says in Holy Sex that the Holy Spirit may breathe upon the dying embers of the last bits of our energy for the day, so that we can, fan into flames some, more passionate desire. Or pray for, help to relax, or help to be present in the moment and open to whatever pleasure there may be, or for, whatever. It's okay. I just want to mention it's okay to pray about your love life. And that can really help a lot of women feel, blessed and safe and relaxed. And then, so your question was like, what can we do with our minds during lovemaking? Okay. First of all, just notice and recognize the kinds of thoughts that come up. That's the first step. Do you have thoughts like, he thinks I'm fat, I'm not good enough, this is taking too long, he's probably thinking of other women he's been with, he's probably bored? Your mind might be full of these sort of self-critical thoughts or negative assumptions about what your husband's experience or thoughts are. And if you're not talking with each other during lovemaking, those sorts of negative thoughts can run rampant. So a tip I have is to talk with each other and say words that are positive and loving, maybe related to your wedding vows, maybe just affirmations of each other. Those can help keep your brain from fixating and entertaining those sorts of impatient or critical thoughts. Another great strategy that a lot of women love is to tell each other a romantic story. I mean, and by that, I mean a sexy story, starring you too, as you're making love. Say, like, I'm imagining us, at a cozy cabin in the woods, and it's snowing outside, and you just came in from chopping the wood, and you're wearing a red flannel shirt or whatever. Like, paint the scene and tell about, like, okay, and then ask him to share a part, like, okay, and what am I wearing when you come in the cabin? And then have him describe it. And then, you can kind of take turns developing this really marital erotic fantasy, which is totally licit and okay for you to think about. That can keep your mind from spinning out in all the negative things. Another good thing you can do is create a script for yourself that specifically targets your worst negative thoughts. Write the reverse of that negative thought. Practice it ahead of lovemaking, and then in lovemaking also just rehearse it again and again. So if the negative thought is, this is taking too long, which, okay, yeah, actual real life sex with a woman that respects her arousal curve, this is going to take between 30 and 60 minutes usually. And that's not what we see in the movies, right? Where it's like a 3-minute, 5-minute scene, just a couple thrusts of penetration and she's out of her mind with ecstasy. That's totally not how female sexuality works, right? You need a lot of time to get along the arousal curve. And so instead of thinking this is taking too long, just think this is taking the time it takes, or this is just the right amount of time, or I'm present in this moment, or I'm glad we have this time together. And some sort of script that targets that taking too long thought. And then also just a realistic check-in, like, it's not too long. Maybe you've been having sex too quickly, and judging your arousal curve by your husband's, which is going to be much shorter and more intense. And if you don't get aroused and get to intense pleasure as quickly as your husband does, that doesn't mean it's taking you too long. It means you're a woman, and that you are functioning really well according to the way God designed women to function. It's just part of his plan that somehow with, these two very different experiences of arousal, we need to come together in attunement and love and connection and communicate to match up better. That's the husband's gift of self, to hold back and learn to temper his arousal and attend to his wife and give her lots and lots of foreplay and, exercise self-control so that he can match up better with her.
Yeah. Okay. So then let's get into the control piece then. Let's get into that, because in my head, this whole time I'm thinking, okay, what is the end goal for a married couple in their intimate life? I would say that the end goal is complete freedom in giving myself or giving ourselves to each other, just complete freedom in doing that, because freedom brings joy. Freedom brings a gift of self. Freedom, like everything in my head screams freedom. Like, can I have the freedom to not hold anything back, to give my whole self, to let go of control, right, of what this is going to look like, and to be, to not have any feeling of shame or like violation or use, and just freedom to give myself to my husband. And control obviously has a lot to play there. So what are your thoughts around getting to that end goal of freedom, and how control really holds us back from that end goal?
I love that goal of freedom, of really, just being able to freely give, free to be playful, free to be, whatever sort of lovemaking can be so many different moods and vibes. It could be mournful. Maybe there was a death in the family and you're coming together to reconnect and you're both grieving, or one of you is grieving more than the other. You can still make love, and, and it can be very meaningful and loving in that. But yeah, free to really be present in the moment.
Right.
That's really good. And then free to let this sort of more primal part of ourselves come out, that's a bit more powerful, that might have make noises that are not ladylike everyday life noises.
Yeah.
A lot of women suppress that because, they just are afraid, if I really let go and surrender to this intense, out of control feeling that's coming closer, as I can feel like maybe orgasm coming closer, I'm scared of what might happen. I might fart, I might moan in a really weird way or whatever. And
these are reasons that I am all for marital sex. Because honestly, morality aside, how embarrassing for a stranger. This is one of the reasons why sex is for marriage. Let's just say that right there. Embarrassing things can happen. And I'd so much rather be embarrassed in front of my husband than anyone else.
And that's real intimacy, right? Trusting that you can be accepted and held and loved, even if you're doing things you're not very ladylike. And same with him, just laugh and play through. Control is because we don't trust, because we're afraid, because we believe this lie that I'm only going to be okay if I control everything. And I have a lot of thoughts around this. I think my personal theory is this goes all the way back to Adam and Eve in the garden, that Adam let Eve down. He should have stepped in front of her and the serpent who was having a conversation with her. He was afraid. He abdicated. He was weak in that moment. She kind of took control of the situation. And now we've all, in a sense, learned to not trust our husbands, that life is only going to go well when we do everything my way, when we load the dishwasher the right way. Oh, no, don't put the dishes, don't put the plates in that way. You can't get as many in. And then he's like, oh, okay, I guess, then he's going to stop loading the dishwasher because he's always doing it wrong. So we just have this falsehood that we believe, this lie. And the truth is that you are safe in God's care for you, that you're not in control of everything, that you can trust that that you're going to be okay. And this does take, some real growth in your marriage with your husband to know, does he have me? Will he hold me? Is the ball going to drop? But a lot of times, for most women, you can let go of your over control in about 80% of the things that you're controlling and still be okay. You're doing it too much. But in the bedroom, yes, this is us monitoring ourselves, controlling the situation. Maybe it's saying yes to lovemaking when you're exhausted, so you can just get it done with, and then check that off your list, and then go to sleep, right? And that's kind of being controlling. If you could be truly vulnerable and say, I love you, I am so exhausted, let's set aside some time this weekend for a really good lovemaking session, right? And see what happens, right? Then the control is really pervasive. It's in a lot of areas in our marriage. And I have a special little bonus for all the wives in my delight, specifically around surrender and control and responsibility, and to kind of help untangle that knot in the relationship. But in order to have an orgasm, see, this is nothing that we can control. There's no part of orgasm that comes with control. We can't make ourselves have an orgasm. Usually, we can only set up the conditions so that if it's possible, it will come, sort of like sleep. Or if you're nursing, Haley, having a baby nurse, you can set up the conditions so that it's going to happen, baby will nurse. But you can't make that baby take the breast, even if you're engorged and you really want baby to. Baby's hungry and fussy. There's no forcing it.
No, that makes sense. Yeah.
And then, you have to be able to surrender to the intensity of, what may happen during orgasm in order to have one. So, Yeah. But control, the opposite of control isn't being a doormat. And another problem that I see a lot with women who come into my delight is they are ragdolling. They're being a ragdoll in lovemaking. They're just laying there completely passive and limp, and they're just like, okay, do your thing. And that's not, like, I would say that is a form of control in a way as well. Like, you're just not going to show up, you know?
Yeah. Well,
And
I'm kind of seeing there be a twofold between what you're saying, like ragdolling, right? Like you're not even participating at that
right.
point. Like you're there, but you're not actively participating. And then the other end of the spectrum, I think, is having so much
Yeah.
control where you can't receive anything from your husband. Like the
Right.
second he touches you, it's like, no, that's not the touch that I was expecting. I don't want that touch. Like taking control of the situation rather
Mhm.
than receiving. So yeah, just getting to that middle ground, I think, yeah, that's where freedom is in that middle ground. And that takes self-care, that takes mindset work, that takes whether seeing a doctor if you're having pain, like, yeah, that's where the goal is, I think, from what I'm
Yeah.
hearing. Yeah. Yeah. Well, Sarah, I feel like, oh my gosh, I want to have you on again because we're at our time, but
Yeah.
golly, that was just, there's so much more that needs to be talked about in this topic, but I'm really, really grateful for the topics that we did cover. For our listeners who want to get in touch with you, want to follow you, where can they do that? Also, I know you have a freebie for my listeners, so tell us a little bit about that too.
Yeah, well, I have my own podcast, which is just called My Delight with Sarah Bartel. So come on over and take a listen. I talk about all sorts of things like how to say no, period sex, what about quickies? I had my husband on the other day to do a joint episode with me. So
That's
come
fun.
take a listen on My Delight. And then I do have a free guide for Catholic married women to learn how to enjoy intimacy more. It covers 9 skills for body, mind, and spirit. So you can go to canafeast.com, and then it is, sorry.
And I can link
Yeah.
link it in the description. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I just found it. canafeast.com/mydelight-9-skills. Yeah, I should
Okay.
probably get a catch here.
We'll have it in the show notes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Sarah, for being on. This was such a good conversation. I really appreciate your time.
It's been so fun. Thanks so much, Haley. God bless.
Thanks for listening to the Truth and Fertility Podcast. If you are enjoying this content, please leave a 5-star review. That helps me tremendously. For more information about learning to chart your fertility cycle, you can visit truthandfertility.com, and I'll talk to you guys again next week.